Thank you very much for joining me. I'm the host of the Hybrid Remote Center of Excellence. I'm Nola Simon. And joining me today is the founder of Generalist World, Milly Tamati. Thank you so much.
Hi.
Oh,
No, I'm so happy to be here.
because it's really exciting. And Milly is a really interesting person. Currently, she lives in a tiny island off the coast of Scotland, but she's actually from New Zealand. Do you want to give us a snapshot of your life? I'm quite sure you can capture more succinctly than I can.
A snapshot of my life. Yes. So grew up on a farm in New Zealand, grew up milking cows, realized that the farm life wasn't for me. And I didn't want to marry the neighbor and have a bigger farm. And I was like, I wonder what else is out there in the world. But I had that question, right? What do you want to be when you grow up? What do you want to do? And I had absolutely no idea, like most 16 or 17-year-olds. So I ended up going to university and studying teaching because to me, that kind of seemed like interesting. It could like flex across lots of different domains. The generalist thing is coming through early here. And so, yeah, I am a fully qualified teacher. But when I got my degree, I realized that I really didn't want to be, I wanted to explore. I had grown up in New Zealand and I knew that there was a big wide world out there. And I had this burning desire to get out and experience it and explore it. And so that kind of kicked off what was meant to be a 1 year trip that was 12 years ago of this exploration. And so I booked a 1 way flight to Berlin and I became completely obsessed with new things, new cultures, new languages, new experiences, new jobs, new people. And I have, for the past about 10 years, I have been building businesses around the world. I worked as a tour guide for many years as well, which seems like unrelated to anything, but it actually formed like the basis of my skill set, which is like bringing people together, creating experiences, building something out of nothing, being like really people focused. And yeah, I fell into the startup world in 2017. There was a new startup kicking off out of the Philippines, and they asked me to come out and be like one of their first employees. That was my first dip into the startup world. From there, I learned everything I knew from them. And then I realized I can probably just go and do this myself. So I launched my first business in Australia. And then I've been building my own businesses ever since. That's a
Why
really
did you end up in Scotland? Particularly kind of.
Yeah, so my on the travels, I met my now husband, and he's Irish, but we were living in Ireland for a while, actually, in the middle of COVID. And like everyone in COVID, we were like, what are we doing with our lives? What are we going to do next? And a job came up to come and make whiskey on this little island. And we were like, we're yes people. We were like, sure, let's move to this little island and figure out how to make whiskey. And he doesn't actually work that job anymore. He works in a completely different industry, in the climate industry. But we decided to stay. And now we are so embedded in the community, it's like impossible to leave.
That is really cool. And that's the thing. That's what I find interesting about you. You have this ability to do things in person and make an impact in your immediate community, but you also connect people globally around the world. You've got what, 71,000 people following the Generalist World newsletter. Yeah. How many people are members?
We've got, I think, around 650 paid members. And yeah, I think it's about 80,000 in our like wider network. So that's across socials and newsletter. But like, it is amazing. The generalist conversation, like when I started this thing a couple of years ago, it wasn't cute. It wasn't cute. You'd say the word generalist and you'd get like a dirty side eye. Like, why would you want to associate with that? And I was like, why would you not want to associate with that? I actually couldn't understand. I had such a contrarian view to it because from my experience, people who had this generalist skill set were amazing. Like they had so much to bring and they had the most interesting careers ever. And I just couldn't understand why the world saw this really differently. And it's like anything, it's easy to say now, oh yeah, now we've connected all of these 80,000 people across the world. But it didn't start as that. It just started as one or two or three. And many of those people are still within GW and within my close circle. So yeah, I think particularly when people are thinking about like building networks, it can feel overwhelming or it can feel like the end goal is to be really huge, but really it's actually a success as well. if you connect 10 people, like that's amazing. If you can really bring 10 people together who needed to meet each other, like what a win.
Yeah, yeah. And I feel blessed because you gatekeep how often people can get into the community. So I'm
Yeah.
blessed that I feel that I'm a member of it. So I'll tell you just shortly my generalist story. I know Lisa heard, but I'll just tell it just for the audience. For years, people always wanted me to be a teacher. Partly it was family dreams, partly it was because of the weight in my hair. But I also am I was always a gifted student, right? I majored in math. I minored in
Mhm.
history. I studied it all in French with a smattering of Spanish on the side. So that's your first tip. But I'm
Yeah.
actually a masker. I'm not one of the squiggly career stuff because I had to work for a company for over 17 years and I've been in customer service for over 25 years. So I've had very narrow paths, but it's because I was masking the generalist skill set. So I go deep. So I have wide range. I took the generalist quiz. They have a fabulous generalist quiz if you want to know what type of generalist you are. And I actually scored on like the widest range,
Ooh, interesting.
but I have the ability to go deep. So like the
Yeah.
T-shaped generalist kind of thing. So if you think about customer service, when you get a call, it could be asking anything. So
Totally.
customer service generally actually people who are generalists do well because you have to know anything that could come your way. In a way, it makes that logical sense. That's where I ended up because I'm really good at being able to field whatever happens to come my way. So that's my story of how I ended up there. And if you look at what I'm doing right now with the future of work, that never being more generalist. It it could
Totally.
be it could be everything that needs to be addressed to really develop a future of work that's going to help people thrive and businesses succeed.
Mm.
Yeah, that's my story. And that's why I was drawn. I remember when they first floated the idea of the London Interdisciplinary School. I remember, and I never wanted to, after I finished university, I never wanted to take like a master's because I wasn't interested in going deep. Like,
Mhm.
I majored in math, but I majored in math. I chose math as my major instead of history as the major because of the STEM bias that exists in the world. It-
Mm.
It's funny because that often comes up because I read more as like a liberal arts person. When people
Mhm.
first get to know me, they think that I'm,
Yeah. That's,
and they try to discount you that way. And I'm like, yeah, but I majored in math. And they're like, oh, I don't know what to do with that.
oh my gosh. If I had $1 for every time I heard that exact line, we don't know what to do. That doesn't fit into our box.
Well, it doesn't fit into the box, right? So I remember reading about what they were planning with the London Interdisciplinary School, and I was like, it
Mhm.
was the first time I ever was like, if I was going to do a master's,
Yeah.
I'll do that.
Yes.
And
That's
you
funny.
have somebody on your team who actually works for the school and you, right?
Yeah, I don't work for them. We have a
No,
close partnership with Nikita, who
yeah.
she actually leads partnerships for AS, the London Interdisciplinary School. And we've done a few events with them. The International Generalist Day, we did a big event that included LinkedIn, a couple of the top universities in London. So, like, the work they are doing is so important because they're a challenger university. Like, to disrupt, I know that word gets used a lot, but truly to disrupt higher education, kudos, because that is a feat to even begin. Like, you're trying to disrupt organizations that are like institutions that are hundreds of years old, particularly in the UK,
Yeah.
probably similar in the US actually. So I think they're doing incredible work, and I'm really excited to see now they're getting there. I think they've been around for about 4 or 5 years, so their students are now going out into the world, and it's going to be really interesting to see those case studies of where they end up and how their careers take shape.
Yeah, no, it's interesting. And of course, because I have kids and everything that my whole life is based in Canada, like I'm not in a position to really just come to the UK and do secondary, post-secondary education. So that's why I chose Generalist World because it allows me to really see everything that you're developing and meet journalists from around the world. But you are actually exploring the idea of education for journalists as well too. Do you want to talk about your new venture, which is needed to really bring revenue into journalist world and really advance you to the next step?
Yeah, totally. I think it's filling a gap, to be honest. Like, what I think what we're really strong at, and particularly what my skill set is really what I'm really good at, is like the creation and distribution of content. So we've been able to build this like really strong, engaged, excited audience. And then we had our core product is community, which is a community membership. We open it a few times a year. And what we realized very quickly is that community is hard. Like, it is so difficult to get right. And the last thing you want to do with a community, in my opinion, is scale it, particularly too quickly. So the engineering of like how many people to let in has been so like the meetings that we've had, like the thought that's gone into trying to get this balance right of like, okay, we're growing, but we don't want to lose this like beautiful essence of the like culture and the feeling of Generalist World. So we knew that we needed some kind of other product. And the other thing is not everyone needs community. Like some people are like, I'm good. But I do need the education. And so what we did is we ran an understanding generalist survey, which I'm happy to share the link. And we really wanted to understand what the biggest pain points for generalists were, what the patterns were. And then we wanted to figure out how can we simply provide tools and support so people can work their way through these big challenges. And one of the things that kept coming up almost every single time was this like positioning and packaging and like translation of your skill set to an employer, to a client, to a hiring manager. It's that feeling of, oh, I could do everything. And that's actually not helpful for the person who wants to hire you to hear. Like you need to translate it into a language that they understand. So so we basically created this course. It's called Unboxed. And I was thinking about it over the weekend that I think a lot of courses promise you quick answers. So they promise you like, if you watch these 5 hours, you're going to get all the answers and you can copy and paste them. And that is not what Unboxed is. And in fact, I think this is probably like an anti-selling point, but it is the truth that like the answers come from the deep work. And Unbox will guide you through that deep work. It'll help you see the value that you bring. It'll help you, it'll help shape how you can stack your skills. It'll help you run career experiments. And these are all things that like, I'm not here on a pedestal being like, this is what careers should be. And this is how you should design your path. I'm the opposite of that. I'm like, you should design your path however you want. And it should be unique to you. And you don't have to stay in your lane and you don't have to be in the box. And because of that, to develop a course around that, it's a little, you can't really hand people the answers or like the one track of how to do that. So Unbox is a course that explores what kind of modern careers look like and what a career for you looks like. I really believe that careers don't have to be something that you just go to from 9 to 5 and be a little bit miserable. Like I think they can be a vehicle to loads of meaning. I think from what I can tell, like you get this in the work that you do. It's a lot of joy and fulfillment and meaning. And I'm like, oh my gosh, if we could help more people create careers like that, what a net positive to the world. So Unbox, I believe when this episode goes out, it'll be live. We're opening just for 1 week. So if it resonates, I would love to see folks in there.
So it's a standalone course. You don't have to be a member of Generalist World to actually sign up for Unbox, right?
Correct. If you just want the course, you can purchase the course at any time over the next week. But we are going to be offering, because basically every time we open the community, it sells out. So we are going to be offering, if people really want in for our February 2025 cohort, you can reserve your spot. You can get it now. And that will mean that you absolutely get a spot next year. But if you're not up for the community, no worries at all. You can just opt in for the course. And yeah, that will be available.
Okay, perfect. Yeah, I wanted to make sure I have and I've seen you're offering members discounts, right?
Yes.
Is that
Yeah.
yeah, that's something that you can find out in the community if you happen to be a member.
Yeah. GW perk. We
Yeah,
love you.
exactly. That's right. And I think that's fabulous because people don't really understand generalists, right? And they don't often understand how to translate it into the world of work as it currently stands and what it's going to be in the next 5 to 10 years. Everything is being disrupted. And you think about AI. Milly ran a fabulous experiment. I want to talk about your experiments, actually. She's very good at skills stacking, but also going out to the community and asking for ideas and support and just brainstorming in general. So she's gifted at bringing people together and just getting people to spitball, really. And so you ran an experiment to get sponsorship for Generalist World because you have staff, you have expenses, you have technology that you have to pay for. And you were testing out napkin AI. And I did this with my podcast because I wanted to see, I'm not a visual thinker at all. And so I saw your post about this and I was like, oh, cool, because I've been experimenting with Pinterest. And I'm like, the thing that I struggle with is what visuals to pair with my content. And so I took the 100+ episode titles of my podcast and put it into Napkin AI and asked it to generate a visual that would represent the themes of the podcast. And it came up with this fabulous visual. Actually, it actually does a deep dive and it gives you like probably like maybe somewhere between 20 and 30 that you could choose.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
presents it in a different way, and then you can choose whichever one you want. But you did this as an experiment. Right. You selected one of those visuals, and then you asked the community to help you amplify that post so that you could get in front of the Napkin AI CEO and ask them whether they would like to sponsor the community.
Yeah.
Now, this took off on, I know you had it on LinkedIn, but it really took off on TikTok, right?
Yeah. Massively.
This is an example of how an experiment can really lead to it. Even I don't know where it ends, whether you've had that conversation about sponsorship or not, but it gets so many eyeballs and just draws attention to the idea of generalist world. And did you want to talk about that a little bit?
Yeah, it's so funny because that one wasn't an intentional experiment. That experiment evolved on the fly. Probably not the best like scientific approach, but as a rule, I love experiments. I love testing little things and being like, that became a big thing. What worked? How can I do that again? How can I bring other people into the fold? So the idea behind Napkin AI, I just found it somewhere, saw a link somewhere and tested it out, and the video that you see, I think it's about 15 seconds long. That's
Yeah,
legit. That's literally me on the first time. And all those reactions are completely legit. I couldn't believe that it was instantly. I am a very visual thinker. And so for me, it was like Christmas, seeing these things instantly be created, these graphics. And so I posted it. It I think the thing with socials is pretty quickly if something is going to hit, and it was hitting immediately on TikTok. People were talking about it, they were sharing it. And so I was like, okay, I'll cross post it to the LinkedIn, test out the waters. There's always different audiences there. So not a given that it's going to hit there. It landed there as well. And what I did from there is that's when I started to say, okay, this seems to be taking off on both platforms. What are my options? What can I do here? How could this be a win for me, for Napkin, for the community? What could that look like? And so then I created a follow-up video basically saying, this is now a pitch. My last video for Napkin got, I think it's over 450,000 views, something bananas. TikTok was a wild place. And yeah, I just tagged Napkin in it. And then their CEO reached out to me and was like, wow, that was pretty cool. I hopped on a call with their head of growth and we just had a really transparent conversation. I was like, I really like your product. I think it's awesome. I think the key to this is do it so sparingly. Like I never shill, like never promote almost any product unless I'm using it every day. I'm wowed by it. I'm not doing it for the bonuses, or I think your reputation online, you have to be so careful. And so for me, this was a great product. I knew that people would like it because I liked it. I am my target audience. Yeah. And I was like, I know that this could be helpful for folks. TBD, that is still in process. They're keen to figure out some kind of partnership and we're just looking into it. So the experiment continues.
Yeah, no, and I think that's cool. But that leads us to our next experiment, which was intentional.
Yeah.
And I will let you guide that one because I want to make sure that it's going to get the attention that you want it to have. So, can you tell us all about our surprise for Thanksgiving week?
Yeah. And I think I'll try and frame it from what people can learn and what people can take away and what people can do in their own businesses or careers that they could replicate things. So the first thing is I asked a question in Slack. We have a team channel, and I was like, "Hey guys, what does it look like to do something weird?" I was like, "Let's have a thread. There are no bad ideas. Just it doesn't. Money's not an issue. Time is not an issue. Network is not an issue. Just idea storm. Let's
If we
get
had no
ideas down."
constraints,
No
what would we do?
constraints. What would we do? What would we do? And one of the ideas that came up was we're like, oh, we'd have a billboard in Times Square. And then I sat on that for a second and I was like, huh, I actually think that I know someone who knows how to hook that up. And it was simply like a message to them being like, hey, we're really interested in getting this billboard. Do you think you could connect us? And they said yes. And this is also the power of network. And lesson, ask for things, be a good person, and then just ask for things. And when people need things from you, return the favor if you can. So this person was able to connect us. It's all through Brex. Shout out to Brex who are hooking us up with this. And we basically had a call with their partnerships team, and we, long story short, were able to get a billboard. The Thanksgiving thing was a surprise. That was just a cherry on top. We had no influence or say over that. And then, so we basically then had this opportunity where our very small team, very small, like people often think Generalist World is a lot bigger than we are. We're actually really tiny.
That's why, right? 6 people?
Yeah. And up until the last maybe 3 months, or maybe a bit more, 4 or 5 months, it was just me being the only full timer. And then everyone else was like 1 or 2 days a week. So it was like hilarious when people would think that we were this massive company. So basically, our little team is like dancing around our living rooms, being like, this is wild, we're getting a billboard. But because we have our community who is like just the core of everything that is Generalist World, it starts in the community and everything from there. We were like, let's ask the community, what do they want to have on a billboard? This is not, and this is actually this is a philosophy or how I think about our community is that it's not like Generalist World and then the community, they're just one and the same. So when Generalist World gets a billboard, our people are getting a billboard. This is a message from us, from me, from the team, from them. And you saw the thread.
Yeah, it was so fun.
People were jazzed. They were excited. And we ended up choosing a slogan that someone in the community on that thread created. So it couldn't be more like community driven. And we thought to make it a little bit fun, we've kept the final slogan a bit of a secret.
I'm interested to know if I'm right. I guess which one I would pick. I'm dying to know if I'm.
This is a fun thing. It's like if you can find ways to make things fun. The internet these days, it's either so self-promo-y or inauthentic or insincere. And if you can just find ways to, inside these spaces, have these really sincere conversations and connections, then it becomes like their favorite place on the internet.
Oh
Because
yeah,
it's
and
a really clean place to hang out.
every day. Honestly,
Literally.
I don't necessarily always write everything, but I read a lot. Right?
Yeah, there's a lot to read. Even I like to. I love you guys. I can't keep up, which is a great point. Like, you got to be really careful about the scale of how you scale things. It's a science. So yeah, then yesterday, this is actually a funny little story. Yesterday, our team, we had a stand-up meeting and we were talking about what's going to happen with the billboard. And we were like, okay, how can we get people involved that are like outside of New York? Because we have a pretty big following in New York, but we're global, lots of people outside. And we're like, how funny would it be if we created this campaign where basically anyone can have a billboard? You just go stand outside. We have our squiggle, which has now become, we may as well trademark that emoji because it's become synonymous with Generalist World.
I saw somebody trying to use it yesterday, and I was like, yeah, that's not going to fun.
That's serious, trying to use it. So this is how ridiculous our team is. We were like, we got really excited and we were like, yeah, let's just go and do it right now. And honestly, 4 minutes after that call, Edja posted a picture and she's outside. She's done the squiggle. She's holding her billboard. And I was like, then Emily's up a tree.
I know. She was handing
She's working from her bed. She looks like that sloth emoji. It's the best thing ever. And we were having so much fun. And I think that radiates through everything. If we're having fun, people want to hang out with people that are having
I
fun.
I was planning it yesterday. I was coming home from dropping off my daughter, and I was just driving along Lake Simcoe, and I was like, "Oh, cool! Look at all the Canada geese on the lake because nothing's frozen in Canada. Like, cool. Oh, in like the UK right now, yeah, nothing. I literally didn't even look at when I was walking yesterday, and I'm like planning my squiggle in front of the Canada geese and the lake. So I have to go back.
Love it.
It's colder today, but I think they'll still be there. Yes, that's
That's
cool.
amazing.
Yeah.
That's amazing. And so it's almost like if people listening think about it as there was a big experiment that started, the impetus was, hey, what's some like weird marketing things we can do? And then from there it was like, okay, we've got this billboard. How can we involve the community? And now it's an experiment with an experiment. We're now running this other campaign within that, which is like anyone can have a billboard. And I think it's just about tapping into, we call it being strategically weird.
Yeah.
Where like you could just do things. You could just be like, hey, that'd be fun. Do we think that would be fun? Cool. Let's just go do it. It'd be great. I
This
think
morning, Milly sent me into just to see what we want to talk about because I'm very bad. I keep things very casual, very
it's great.
forget that people like structure. And so she sent me a note, and but if we talk about the billboard campaign, I don't want it to release until Monday. And I'm like, we can totally use the podcast, so you don't have the campaign, and publish this on Monday so that not only do you have like pictures from around the world, but you'll have a full blown podcast episode that you can
Appreciate it.
amplify. Used to amplify.
Cool.
Yeah, exactly. That's right. And that happened what, in 10 minutes? Not even?
Yeah. Yeah. We have a saying at Generalist World, what if it were as simple as
Yeah.
fill in the blank? And I think everyone complicates things so much. Just turn it down, take a breath, take a step back. What is the simple version? And the simple version is being like, cool, let's hop on a Zoom, record, let's publish it on Monday. Simple.
Yeah, exactly. Because you actually published with your sleep with the revenue challenges that you've had for Generalist World. You mentioned, I'm on my bucket. And that's how that, because I'm like, Millie, do you want to come with? Let's hear it.
Yeah. And that is another experiment.
Yeah.
Actually, for context for listeners, I realized my whole thesis is to build in public, and not just build, but to learn in public. I am not out here being like, I know all the answers at all. I am very much, I'm figuring it out, doing pretty well, having a lot of fun on the way, and I will share as much as I can so that you can figure it out too. And I realized that I had been so caught up in the operations of Generalist World that we've now got a small team that comes with payroll and all that kind of scary stuff, that I'd lost my magic a little bit of the transparency building in public. Basically my rhythm. I'd lost my building in public rhythm. And I wanted to make sure that particularly the GW members had that access, had that insight into what Generalist World is, where we're going, how they can be involved, and how it all fits into the bigger picture of this future of work, because so many people within the community really care about this stuff. And so last month, I was like, okay, I'm going to experiment with an email just for Generalist World members. And it's going to be like a behind the curtain. It's going to be like raw, vulnerable, if that ever deep on I think I called it a little letter, which was completely incorrect because
It wasn't little.
it was really lost.
Yeah. But it was the best thing I read last month. It was really the best thing. I mean, your writing ability is why I'm part of the community to begin with. Like, you just capture the heart with everything that you're able to write and convey. And like that personally is your true gift from my perspective. So that, I read that and I was immediately like, Millie, you need to be in my podcast.
Yeah, literally. Actually, you replied to that email. That's how And just a note on the writing, because I think that's really important. We have what I call like a writing culture at GW, where every single person on the team is a brilliant writer. And that's not by accident. That's by design, because to be a brilliant writer, and when I say brilliant, clear, they are able to be really clear and they can execute really well on their like writing needs. And the reason I obsess so much over that and really look for that in hires is because it just means they're great thinkers. They're really clear thinkers. If they can really think things through and then write it down so that they understand it. And communication, right? Like, particularly with AI going like everywhere, being a great communicator is going to be everything, whether you're communicating with people or machine learning. I think writing is going to be perhaps one of the most important skills in 2025, to be a really clear, thoughtful writer. If I could give advice to young people, it would be just practice, because writing is a skill. I think some people come out of school and they're like, oh, but I didn't do well in English, or I'm not a good writer. You can learn. You can learn to be a clear writer and a clear thinker. And in fact, a lot of the lessons that you learn in school aren't going to serve you, particularly in the world of like business and startups and tech, those very like structured sentences. It's more about finding your voice and having an opinion. I think a lot of the stuff I see, particularly on socials these days, is almost like lukewarm. It's like people have lost their stake in the ground, or hey, this is my opinion. And then particularly on LinkedIn, I think we've also lost our ability to like debate and actually just have differing opinion. That's like a little bit of an echo chamber, which I do try and challenge my posts. I try and I guess say the quiet things out loud. And I think that's often why they resonate. It's because if you're thinking something, I almost guarantee others are thinking it. They just may not have had the language or the courage or the confidence, whatever it might be, to say it out loud.
Yeah. Oh, yeah, absolutely. And honestly, I started the podcast in part because I wanted to challenge myself to become a better listener. It wasn't necessarily about, yes, there's a speaking aspect to it as well too, but what I wanted to learn from podcasting was, how do I ask better questions? How do I ask deeper questions? But how do I listen better? Because I like thinking. I like my own thoughts. And I found that I was interrupting people. And that
Yeah.
was something
Yeah.
that I wanted to actually train myself out of. And I wanted to do it in such a way that I was doing it publicly to hold myself accountable.
Mm.
But I wanted to be able to learn, and I wanted other people to be able to learn from me as well too, which is why I did it publicly in a podcast.
Amazing. Kudos to you. And you just named it, but I was like, Nola, that is an experiment. This is the career. Like all of these things, the more I think about it, the more examples I see. People are just running these little mini career experiments, and they don't have, maybe the podcast lasts for 10 years. Maybe it lasts for 10 months. Doesn't matter. You're learning skills along the way. You're becoming a better listener along the way. And just like kudos to you for having the self-awareness of, hey, I actually think this might be a skill that I could sharpen, that I could hone. What's a cool way? What's an experiment that I could run that would help me sharpen that skill? So I think that's really brilliant.
Yeah. And going back to how long did the podcast last? You are like the second to last guest. I have one more person. And then next year, I want to look at all of the episodes that I've done and think about what I've learned from them. And then I dig deeper. So I'm not going to do any guests next year, but it's like,
Okay.
how do you take the knowledge that exists in 100 episodes and then do that deeper? Right. So I'm thinking maybe I could do essay type zones where I'm connecting. I'm meaning that we learn from like various episodes to actually deepen it and connect and see what avenues we can actually go down. So I might actually only release like 12 episodes, like one a month next year. But the goal is really, it's not necessarily more, because more can just be noise, right? So what is it
Totally.
you've learned? Everybody wants to publish all the time, but I think at some point you need to slow down and think how you go
Take stock.
deeper, right?
Yeah.
That's an experiment for next year.
Yeah. I wonder if an interesting prompt, like the prompt that got you here was, how can I become a better listener? And I wonder if the prompt for the next one is, what do I want to learn this year? And maybe it's like how to synthesize information or how to distribute content, or whatever it might be. And then that could form the basis of your next experiment.
Yeah,
I'm excited. I'm
I
excited to
know.
see what you come up with.
I know, yeah, because I look at some of these podcasts and they have 800 episodes, and I'm like, what does anybody learn from that? Because I'm not going to do a deep dive and listen to 800 episodes. I find it overwhelming when I look at your podcast that way, and I'm like, I don't even know where to start.
Yeah, I hear you. And I just need to call out 100 is amazing. I think like
Thank you.
average most people get to is like 3.
I know,
Like
no, or
I think it's
10.
really,
Like I've heard,
yeah, it's really low.
it's
And
the
so
fabulous
100,
pod fade.
the consistency is fantastic. And just while it's on my mind, you mentioned about asking really good questions, which I think you've done in this episode. And one resource I just love to call out, because it has been like I don't want to say life changing. People throw that word around, but it's a book that will stick in my soul. It was actually recommended to me by Robert Barris, who is in GW. He's a GW OG. And it's called A More Beautiful Question. And I can't remember the name of the author, but if you look up A More Beautiful Question, it's all about the importance of questioning and how like the right questions can be like transformative. How if leaders can ask better questions, that's how you unlock almost everything. And it actually ties into the communication piece as well. So if listeners are like avid readers like I am, I would strongly recommend trying to get your hands on a copy of A More Beautiful Question.
Okay. Yeah, no, that's a great answer. I the Michael Bungay Stainer has a book on questions as well too. He's a Canadian coach. So yeah, I'll look for that one as well too. Because that is guiding you too. But you get information from everywhere. And that's actually something. There's one person I would adore to have on my podcast, and I haven't managed to land her. Her name's Amy Herman. Do you know Amy?
Mm-mm.
So she actually is an art historian. She started as a lawyer. She became an art expert. And what she does is she teaches about how to observe from art. So she actually teaches the FBI, CAA, police forces around the world by training them how to actually interpret art. She's an art historian, like
Amazing.
yeah. And so she has two books. It's called her company is called The Art of Perception. And her second book was called Fixable. So if you're looking for books to actually amplify how you perceive and how you question, those two I recommend. And especially for me, I'm not a visual thinker at all. I'm not an artist. I peaked at kindergarten. And for me, doing that kind of work that really stretches my brain to think, how do I think differently and ask questions in a different way? I lean into my weakness. Right? Yeah, those are my two book recommendations for actually three there. Sorry.
Brilliant.
Too many books we're reading. All right. For the big uncomfortable question, where do you want Generalist World to go? Like say we're talking like 2030. Where do you think Generalist World will be? What have you achieved? What would make you thrilled beyond belief?
Thrilled beyond belief would be to have like systematic change. So change within our organizations. I think we've done a pretty darn great job on the generalist side, on building people's confidence, on giving them language, on bringing them together, helping them feel like validated and seen and heard. And now our next big, giant, enormous hurdle is on the systems side. So that's where do generalists fit in organizations? And how can organizations actually leverage their generalist talent, not just squeeze them into this box of, okay, this is your very narrow role. How can we create basically, how can we create amazing pathways for generalists to lead these careers that are like expansive rather than narrowing? Because not everyone wants to go to a narrow point. Some people, like me, I want my career to keep expanding. That makes me really excited. But there's no obvious pathways apart from entrepreneurship would be one way to do it, which is probably what drew me into it. But I think there's a real opportunity for organizations to get on board as well and to create these pathways for their generalist talent, which they absolutely have in their org anyway. They just don't know how to promote or retain or, frankly, support that talent diversity. So in 2030, I would love for it just to be like almost not even a thing, just like normal for this to be a talked about, acknowledged, valued thing in organizations, that there is this cognitive diversity and that it's really important to actually recognize that and see generalists on a level playing field as specialists, and see that even though our skills are different in the sense that they can be a lot harder to measure and we can often like play in the gaps between like departments and stuff, that they're incredibly valuable. That would probably be my answer.
Very cool. The lattice, not the ladder.
Yes,
The
exactly.
connections. Yeah, not the straight and narrow. Yeah, I like that.
Absolutely.
But yeah, there needs to be a lot changing. And he thinks that AI can actually help with that. Because I've done several podcasts actually about AI use in hiring and how AI can be used to identify skill sets that you don't even know that people actually have. Do you
Mm.
think that AI can actually be the magic that actually unlocks the generalist skill set, depending on how
Um,
it's used?
yeah, great question. There's in there. My thesis is that generalist thinking plus generalist tooling, and by tooling AI tools really, is the unlock for everything. When you give generalists all of these tools, which make their workflow so much more efficient and more creative, and give them space, for me, that's where like major innovation is going to happen. But in terms of the recruitment side, I would say there is a lot of people trying to figure it out. Recruitment is just a beast in itself. Like we're talking about like human resources when you think about it, like even in the name, like maybe we need to have a little bit of a rebrand there. I don't know. I'm an eternal optimist on all things, and that also includes AI. I know it comes with potential like really questionable like challenges and ethical challenges as well and implications. But on the whole, I think that it can be a force for good. How that like tangibly plays out in recruitment and in the workplace, we'll see. I know that there's a lot of people really trying to crack that code because I think if there's one thing we all agree on, it's that the way that we hire doesn't really work. The system is pretty broken. The old CV, 1,000 people applying with a A4 piece of paper. I think we can probably do a little bit better than that. But we'll see how it plays out. I think the next 5 years are going to be exceptionally fast moving and fast changing. Like, just, I'm not sure how often you're using AI, but I am using Claude all day.
Yeah.
All day. I am like jamming me and Claude. It's like my bestie. I can't remember what life was like before Claude. And like, Claude is probably like the equivalent of a 3-month-old. Do you know what I mean? Like,
Yeah.
it's changing so rapidly, so quickly that I think I'm grateful to have spaces like Generalist World because the what we're stepping into, if anyone tells you they know what it is, they're just lying or they're guessing. Like no one actually knows what's coming. And so to have spaces like GW means that you're with a group of people who there's a deep sense of safety and a deep sense of trust and a sense that, hey, we're going to figure this thing out together and we're actually in a better position because we've got each other's back, because we're in this circle with each other. And even though we don't know what's coming, collectively, we're stronger.
Yeah.
And that's what makes me really excited about community.
Yeah. Yeah. And I just wanted to bring a brief shout out to one of the things that happens in Generalist World, and I haven't been brave enough to do it, and that is the hot seat. So I've attended two as a guest. And what hot seats are really is people come with questions that they really want eyeballs on, that they, a
Mhm.
lot of times it's personal. How do I get a job? How do I transition my How do I position myself? How do I identify like the top skills? How do I stack them together and tell that story? A lot of times that's what the hot seats are, but they are intense. That boy, do people come away with
Yeah.
honest, open feedback, lot to process. That's why I haven't been brave enough to actually try it. So,
Yeah.
what's the most amazing thing that you feel about hot seats?
I think the most amazing thing is that it is one person is in the hot seat. So one person comes usually with a specific challenge or problem or sticky thing that they need support on. And the beauty of Generalist World is you have this diversity of people and skills and backgrounds and ages and locations. And so you're getting again, it's a safe place to be like, hey, I'm feeling a bit vulnerable here. I've got this problem or challenge. I need help. And then you're getting all of these insights. And I think my favorite part of it is that even though the person who called the hot seat is getting helped, everyone is learning. Like every hot seat I've ever been on, I'm like, huh, hot dang. Like no one leaves a hot seat without learning something, even if they are not the one with the challenge, even if they're not the one in the hot seat, everyone learns. And so it's again, just so many examples of community where it's just a net positive, where if you bring these people together in a space, and shout out to Edja, who's our community events and ops person, she runs these hot seats like clockwork. And yeah, she's created these spaces where it's a difficult thing to do, to create a space where people know that they can actually show up and be vulnerable. Like we've had some We've had some deep hot seats where it can be professional, it can be personal. It's usually a mix of both because life exists like that. It's complex and messy. And it's just really amazing to have this space, which I don't know, it's kind of like a group therapy session, but we're like, I think the hot seats are where the most transformative change happens for people. If they commit to that hot seat and they come along, that's where things can really shift. And it's just super cool to be a part of that.
Yeah. Yeah. It's very vulnerable to do. And yeah, it will do it at one point, but yeah, it's
No pressure.
takes a lot to actually do it. But anyways, one of the most interesting things I find about Generalist World. Yeah. So is there anything else that we haven't covered that you want to make sure that we're talking about?
This has been such a fun conversation, wide ranging, interesting. So no, just like if this resonates with people, come and say hi. We're a very friendly bunch. We've got wonderful people like Nola in the community. And so if this resonates, the thing is the great thing about Generalist World from a product standpoint is people either like deeply resonate with it and they're like, what? Like, where has this been all my life? Or they're like, I don't get it. I have no idea what this doesn't apply to me. I fit in and it's all good. So like people can like opt in or out pretty easily. So if people are listening to this being like, I'm in the opt-in camp, come and check out www.generalistworld. And yeah, would love to meet you. We're very active on LinkedIn and TikTok to a point. So come say hi.
Yeah, that's how we started chatting. So it's fun.
Yes. Community people are cool.
Thank you so much for joining us. And we'll make sure that we put everything in the show notes.
Yay.
All right,
Thank you so much, Nola.
thanks.
Start finding yourself in orbit.